WESH 2, this is continuing coverage of Nicole.
Right now in WESH 2, Florida remains under a state of emergency, and residents are bracing for impact as Hurricane Nicole continues to move toward our eastern coast. Tonight, we are tracking the storm's path and where it could make landfall here in Florida.
We have team coverage all along the coast and across Central Florida. Our team of reporters, along with our first warning weather team, is keeping you informed as we do our best to keep you safe. We start with Chief Meteorologist Tony Benalfi. And Tony, what's the latest on Hurricane Nicole?
Well, with Nicole now, with the new advisory, we've seen that movement now shift from the west to the west-northwest. So we're starting to get that turn. The cone hasn't changed very again, we are anticipating a landfall right around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe just a little bit earlier than that with that forward speed, still running at about 13 miles an hour towards the west-northwest. 7 a.m. right along the Polk-Osceola County line, and then by 7 p.m. well north and west of Marion County. There's the center of the circulation, a 50 nautical mile eye. And when you have a nautical eye like that big, that usually means you have a very large wind field. And we all know the size of our wind field is very, very large. But the thing that's catching our eye tonight is this big burst of energy being whipped around the north side of Nicole. And that's what we're going to have to watch later on tonight to assess the risk, as we think the chance for tornadoes is certainly going to be there along the eastern side of the around squally weather is but the big burst of energy just right offshore about 10 miles. As that rotates back, we'll get into even stronger winds. Look at Stewart, West Palm, 50 nautical mile eye, the center of that eye to Stewart to 70 miles southeast. Switching over to the Melbourne radar, you can see some intense bands of rain and some pretty good wind. I'm going to have offshore wind coming toward the beach, and Titusville going to be in that 55 mile an hour range. You go out a little bit more and the winds get a bit more intense, closer and closer to that eye south and east. Lots of wind coming into Palm Bay, Melbourne. It's picking up now back towards Bitlow, Orlando. Get ready, Winter Haven, Dr. Phillips, Windermere. That's going to be coming right at you here in the next couple of minutes. And Astor and Altoona starting to get back rain. GFS forecast again showing some of that heavy rain. And Alex, I'll let you take this on into the future.
Yeah, that's right, Tony. So we're going to continue to watch some of the strongest of the winds begin to move on in as we get later on into the morning. There's 4 o'clock in the morning. The core of the winds start to move on into southern Brevard County, close to 60-mile-per-hour winds there. As we continue into 7 o'clock in the morning, core of the winds start to work their way more into northern Osceola County towards Orange County as well. 59-mile-per-hour winds there, 75-mile-per-hour winds there in Claremont. Again, that's 7 o'clock in the morning. Keep a nose at the clock there, 10 o'clock. That's when the core of the winds start to shift their way back out towards the west. 61-mile-per-hour winds there in Wildwood, starting to calm down those winds slightly. Still tropical storm force winds, but at least lighter than they were earlier in the morning across Brevard County. As we continue into the afternoon, those winds really start to lighten on up, and as we get into Thursday evening, we start to really turn the corner there. Now, the severe risk overnight is going to be all along our eastern coast from I-95 out towards the west, towards around I-4, northern Lake County, Orange County extent there of that severe risk. The main risk we're going to be watching, not hail, not really we're not watching for severe winds except for, of course, hurricane, tropical storm winds, but we're going to be watching out for the tornado risk. That's the main risk we're going to be watching out for. As Nicole works its way onshore, the forward movement combined with that twisting motion is going to spin up some tornadoes. We'll have to keep a close eye on that. As we go into tomorrow, notice that risk starts there in Flagler County, so even tomorrow afternoon, not quite out of it yet. Seminole County will be watching out for those wind gusts upwards of about 55 to 70 miles per hour. Orange County, 60 to 75 mile per hour winds. And Osceola County also watching out for those gusts about 70 to 80 miles per hour. We have more county by county breakdowns, plus we'll take a look at that flooding potential in a couple minutes.
All right, Alex, thanks so much. So moving forward, you're going to hear a lot about wind, and you're going to hear a lot about rain and the different impacts that it's going to have in Central Florida and along the coast.
That's right. We want to actually get you along the coast to New Smyrna Beach. This is where WESH's Kelsey Authority. So what's the weather like now?
Well, guys, everybody was just here in Volusia County. That's actually why we moved from the barrier islands over inland here over the North Causeway. And you can see they have partially shut down the causeways here in Volusia County. They're essentially limiting access now to those barrier islands. So they're allowing people, if you're a resident, you can still go over, but anybody else, they're not letting you over there. And that's simply because they expect the weather to get worse and they don't want to have to deal with people who are just going over there, who don't live over there, just to look at the conditions. So they have officially blocked it off here. You can see this police officer is out here monitoring the road. If you're coming off of the islands over to the mainland, that is still allowed. We did that about 45 minutes ago. So people worried about conditions getting worse overnight and they want to leave, they are able. It's once the sustained winds get over 39 miles per hour that they're then going to close off the causeway in both directions. And that really out of a safety reason, because you're higher up in the air, those winds can get really high and it can become dangerous for cars trying to cross. A car pull up here probably about 10 minutes ago and stopped him. He had to get out of the car, show his ID. He proved that he lived over there, and then they let him go over. But you guys can see it's windy over here, and we're, much more inland than we were when we were out on Flagler Avenue, and the winds have definitely picked up. It's not rainy right now, but as Alex and Tony were saying, that's something that we're going to expect in a few hours from now. But Volusia County officials, we're under curfew here. We have been since 7 o'clock. We will continue to be under curfew in Volusia County until 7 a.m. This area, parts of this area are under that mandatory evacuation. And right now we're at Buena Vista Park here in New Smyrna, just right over the North Causeway. Anybody out here. So it does seem, it is getting late into the night, so that also helps. People, would be home anyway, but it does seem like a lot of people are now just staying at home. So we haven't seen a lot of other activity other than that. I know we just heard from beach safety. They were talking about beach erosion here in Volusia County. When we were over on the beach side, we were seeing a lot of that. We were down at an apartment building that was probably 2 miles south of Flagler Avenue, and they had to evacuate that building because the beach erosion had gotten too close to the building. The buildings were deemed. We're dealing with some issues here in New Smyrna, and again, we're not even at the worst of it yet. When we left Flagler Ave, it was getting right around high tide there, and we were definitely seeing a lot of waves splashing up in that area right there on the boardwalk. So right now, not super rainy, but definitely, guys, I would say the big thing we've seen here over the past hour since we talked to you last is just this wind gust picking up, and that's what a lot of officials are preparing for and hoping, to keep everything safe, but they think that might be a big deal when it comes to damage in the area. Back to you guys.
Yeah, Kelsey, you talked about this a little bit, but kind of walk us through what you see and what it feels like where you are right now compared to when you were right up against the shoreline.
Yeah, I mean, as anyone knows, when you go to the beach, it's definitely windier when you're right there on the sand by the water. And it was. When we were down on Flagler Avenue, right there on the boardwalk, it was very windy. We were getting a lot of the sea foam and the spray from the ocean. But here it is gusty. I mean, the river is not far from where we're standing, and the causeway is right here. So this is still a pretty open area, and we are feeling a lot of those gusts. But it's, probably at least
within the cone right now that is poised to go across the southern reaches of our viewing area, but bring tropical storm force winds and even the potential for hurricane force winds along the immediate coastline as we go through the early morning hours. So the storm surge here, the next high tide at Daytona Beach, 8:54, Cocoa 8:39, and over towards Flagler coming in at 9 o'clock. Storm surge warnings up for about 3 to 6 feet of storm surge inundation. On the northern side tonight, the dark purples here, those are the deeper thunderstorms now that have been on the northern side for about the last 2 hours. We still have the dry air working in on the south side, and that big ridge of high pressure to the north is the reason why this is being pulled back towards central Florida. The other intriguing thing now with the storm developing, look at these waves just offshore. 25 to 30 foot seas, and the breakers near shore are 10 to 20 feet here. We're zooming it on in. Look at that. You've got 9, 10, 11, 12 up towards Palm Coast, and then down to the south, literally just offshore, 15-foot waves trying to come back towards the coast. And with the next high tide, we're going to get significant coastal beach erosion. Big band of rain now that extends from Stewart well offshore. This is going to rotate back towards the west. This is the zone we're going to be watching. As this moves up to the north, the risk for tornadoes will increase along the coast, and the winds will continue to pick up with each passing hour right through daybreak tomorrow morning. A 50 nautical mile eye, about 70 miles southeast of Stewart. Look at the bands on that northwest side. Velocity product we have been pinging. Winds here on the order to 70 miles. Melbourne, Keynasville, pockets of moderate to heavy rain. Now in the I-4 corridor, and for the first time in a while, getting into Marion County. So the local impacts here with Alex looking like this, starting with very high concerns for beach erosion.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've been already seeing those dunes really taking a hit, seawalls as well. Even Hurricane Ian really knocked out a lot of that safety infrastructure along the coastline, and these large waves definitely impacting the shoreline. Wind gusts are also on the high side. That's why we do expect to see power outages continuing to increase as we go through the night. Flooding is going to get quite wet out there. Medium risk there for flooding, medium risk for tornadoes as well. I want to focus down more on the flood risk at this point. Latest model here to GFS. You can see it clearly on your screen. That orange swath is where we're going to be watching for about 3 to 5 inches of rain as the storm moves its way onshore. Nicole builds its way through Osceola County, northern Osceola County, southern Lake County, and in the southern Sumter County, going to be dealing with the worst of the rains. I do expect to see these numbers a little bit bumped up, though. I think we'll see a little bit more in the way of that 3 to 5 inch range across much of central Florida, and that is why that flood threat exists across much of the area. That yellow area there overnight is where we're going to be watching those heavy rain bands moving on in. By Thursday, that shifts up. It's up towards the north, mostly into Marion and into Flagler counties. As we take a look at some of these county by county graphics here again, as we go into the day tomorrow, that's when we start to see those impacts increasing for our friends here in Marion County. Thursday morning and Thursday p.m., worst of the weather, max gusts 55 to 65 miles an hour. Rainfall, again, 3 to 5 inches, isolated 6+. A little bit further down to the south in Sumter County, we'll be watching out for the worst of the weather as we go into Thursday morning to Thursday evening. Winds again 50 to 60 miles per hour max. Again, I'm going to be watching out for some isolated county. Again, watching out for those impacts even greater because we're closer to the coast here in Lake County. The southern Lake County will be dealing with more rain, about 6 inches plus. Max wind gusts 60 to 70 miles per hour. Watching out for those flooding potential across the coast. Event and also a wind gust event. Max wind gust 60 to 70 miles per hour over in Volusia County, 60 to 70 plus. Further down to the south in Brevard County, watching those max wind gusts 70 to 80 miles per hour. And then along the I-4 corridor, still going to be dealing with impacts, mostly rain out there, watching for 4 to 6 inches of rain, localized 6+. So we'll watch out for the severe threat as well. Luckily so far, the storm bands that have been coming in, we haven't seen any rotation in them quite yet. But again, the core of the winds still on their way in. As we take a look at Orange County, max rainfall about 4 to 6 inches, localized 7+ as we go into tomorrow morning, and then late tonight into Thursday morning for Osceola County, watching for the worst of the weather with those max wind gusts about 70 to 80 miles per hour. Quick look at the 7-day forecast. Again, there is a bright spot to the forecast. Just like after Hurricane Ian passed, we do expect to see drier and cooler air returning. Look at that high Sunday. 72 degrees with mostly sunny skies, guys.
Wow.
Sunday, people will be going outside getting things done.
Yeah, that's a silver lining. Another silver lining, though, we've been monitoring the power outages, and they're pretty low, everything considered. So we're going to keep an eye on that and keep an eye on all of our local counties. We'll be back with a little bit more after the break. Stay with us.
For the latest on Nicole, download the WESH 2 app now.
Right now, we're tracking Nicole.
WESH 2 first warning weather.
Monitoring the storm's projected path and strength, giving you the first warning so you can prepare.
For the latest on Nicole, stay with WESH 2. Download the WESH 2 app for updates now.
You know it's a serious storm when some of the biggest attractions in Central Florida have closed. That almost never happens.
That's right, and it's all because of Nicole. WESH's Michelle Imbrado joins us in studio right now to kind of walk us through those closures and when we can expect for them to reopen. Michelle.
Well, Summer, the closure announcements, like you said, have been trickling in all day, but now we're getting some reopening plans. So let's start with the very latest. Disney theme parks will reopen in a phased approach starting at noon tomorrow, starting with Magic Kingdom, which will be open until 6. Mickey's Very Merry Merry Christmas party is scheduled from 7 p.m. to midnight. Epcot will be open from 1 to 9 p.m. Animal Kingdom from 1 to 7 p.m. And Hollywood Studios opens at 2 until 10 p.m. Fantasmic will not be presented tomorrow. Transportation will begin 30 minutes prior to each park's scheduled reopening time. Meanwhile, the alligator capital of the world, Gatorland, will be closed tomorrow. Park officials say the closure is for the safety of guests, employees, and the animals. The park is expected to resume operations on Friday if the conditions allow. Okay, we're going to Universal now. Volcano Bay and Universal Orlando Resort, including City Walk, closed early today. Their hotels remained open. A phased but delayed reopening is expected tomorrow after the storm moves through and conditions have been assessed. SeaWorld is closing its local parks tomorrow. Both SeaWorld Orlando and Aquatica Orlando will be closed on Thursday. Meanwhile, the Central Florida Zoo is closed tomorrow. The zoo suffered severe flooding from Hurricane Ian, which forced it to be closed for nearly a month. Officials say they do plan to reopen on Friday. The Brevard Zoo is also closed tomorrow pending the conditions, and they also hope to reopen on Friday. And one more theme park to tell you about. Busch Gardens over in Tampa Bay will be closed tomorrow. Park officials have not said when that park could reopen. We do have more closures for you listed on the bottom of your screen, and you can find all of this information on WESH.com or by downloading our free WESH 2 News mobile app. Jim, Summer, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. I want to get our coverage back into Volusia County, where it's been an interesting day on a lot of fronts, especially when it comes to properties being in danger.
Absolutely. WESH 2's Marley Martinez joins us from Wilbur by the Sea right now. So what can you tell us, Marley?
We are really starting to feel the power of Hurricane Nicole bearing here in Volusia County. And right now we are seeing those heartbreaking scenes that folks have been worried about, the beach erosion. Look right here along the coastline and you can see these backyards are gone. They have just fallen into the ocean. The seawall, which you might not be able to see out there, was already damaged by Hurricane Ian a month and a half ago. So these houses have had absolutely no protection as these whipping winds come crashing in. And if you look down right here, you can see the structure of this home. This backyard is gone. It's like a 25, 30-foot drop straight down. We spoke with a couple of neighbors who live across the street here on Atlantic Avenue. They say they were out here just an hour ago, and that was not there. Now it's gone. And so you can see this is what people were worried about. This was the fear as we were hearing about Volusia Sheriff and Daytona Beach Shores police officers evacuating those 11 buildings because they were afraid of the structural integrity, deeming those buildings unsafe. This gives you an idea. When we spoke with the neighbors who live here, they came across, they looked at it, and they were nearly in tears. They said they couldn't believe that this is what it looks like now, because earlier this morning it did not look like this. Right over the wall, debris from people's backyards is at the bottom of what looks like a cliff now. Furniture, tables, the remnants of the seawall. Now we are standing on the public beach access side. The stairs there are gone, and so we're standing back, far back, so that we're at a safe place. But we're already starting to see the damaging effects of Hurricane Nicole. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right,
Yeah,
Marley.
I can add to this a little bit. I'm really
Marley, thank
familiar
you.
with this area, and that is a place where during high tide and stormy conditions, you still probably have 20, 30 yards of beach.
Oh.
So you're seeing
longer.
what's happening there. And a lot of these homes are in Wilbur are a little bit older. Not all of them have seawalls that that provide protection. A lot of them
Just
are
dunes.
protected by dunes, and that's why they're having the problems that they are.
Yeah, those dunes are gone in a lot of cases. Let's go ahead and get you over to Chief Meteorologist Tony Manolfi right now. So Wilbur by the Sea, where she was, it looked like it was really amping up there, Tony.
Yeah, well, we've been showing you the wave action offshore, 20, 25-foot seas, near shore waves now running about 10 to 15. So, yeah, that's pounding the coast up there by Wilbur by the Sea. Again, the 10 o'clock advisory on Nicole has this as a landfalling hurricane right around 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning. From there at 7 a.m., moving into Osceola, Polk County, and then by 7 p.m., moving up towards the north and west, closing in on Tallahassee. Now, the center of the circulation is right within that cone, so you go based on that guidance, and you look for the model that closely corresponds to that, and that would be the GFS model tonight, not Futurecast, not the European. So that's the one that right now is doing, we think, the best job. There's Palm Coast. We have surge warnings from Palm Coast down towards the Grant Valcaria Barefoot Bay area, and then we also have them there up towards Palatka. Water temperatures and the showing there of the strongest thunderstorms. This is the core right there that we are going to be watching as this moves to the west-northwest and moves on shore over those warm waters. That could produce some tornadoes. We will literally be watching that for you hour by hour right through the early morning and early afternoon hours. Look at the extent of the wind field of tropical storm force winds from Kennedy Space Center due east by almost 450 miles. That tells us even when the storm moves off into the Gulf of Mexico with that wide a spread in winds, it's going to be windy all day from start to finish, no doubt about that. A 50 nautical mile eye, strong wind now coming ashore into Brevard County as the northwest feeder bands begin to march towards Brevard County. Stewart, the center right now, probably closer to about 60 to 65 miles at 13 miles an hour. That's about 5 hours from now. That's about 3:30 in the morning. Look at the bands of rain and wind now. We've been punching 55, 65 near shore, while offshore we have been seeing those winds upwards of 70, 80 miles an hour. Palm Bay getting in on a big dose of moderate to heavy wind and rain. The extent of the gusty winds now into Forest City, over towards Heathrow, down towards Orlando, Dr. Phillips, and then now even getting into the Astor area and portions of eastern Marion County. Wind gusts at the top of the hour. Look at Daytona Beach, 46-mile-an-hour wind gust. Speaking of the wave heights, there it is. That's what's going to be translating close to the coast the next 6 to 8 hours. And as we get into Thursday late on into Friday, things do begin to improve as our storm system lifts back to the north. So let's take a look at the rough surf. We just updated this. Things will improve by Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tonight and Thursday, though, very, very rough here in central Florida. The next high tide at Flagler Beach is going to be at 8:19, Daytona Beach 8:14, and Cocoa Beach right around 8 o'clock in the morning. Once we get past that high tide, we think that the extent of the coastal beach erosion will start to come back down.
Yeah, Tony, the other thing we're going to be continuing to watch is the power outages. Just about, I don't know, it was a half hour ago, we were seeing close to just around in the hundreds for Brevard County out. Now it's really jumped back up. 2,600 people out without power now in Brevard County, and that's really the isolated spot. The rest of our counties doing just fine. But you notice here with our power outage index, as Hurricane Nicole moves on shore, we do expect to see that continued widespread power outages down in southern Brevard County, and now it'll expand up into northern Brevard, into southern Volusia, and as Nicole continues to work its way across central Florida, we do expect to see those wind gusts knocking down some trees and knocking out power in people's neighborhoods. This is why. Take a look at these wind gusts. Here's 4 o'clock in the morning. Notice the strongest of the winds now moving through Osceola County, back up into Orange County as well, moving pretty quickly. By 8 o'clock in the morning, the GFS has the max wind gusts there, 75 in southern Lake County and Claremont, 66 over in Leesburg, 65 in Wildwood, 58-mile-per-hour winds in the villages. And then as we continue through the day into Thursday afternoon, the winds start to lighten up as we go into Thursday evening. There's 8 o'clock. Still tropical storm force winds in spots, but back down into the 20-mile-per-hour ranges there for gusts across Brevard County and into Orange County. And then as we get into Friday morning, much better out there as we start to see those winds begin to subside. Quick look at the coastline for those impacts. Again, coastal erosion is going to be the main concern. Winds 60 to 70 miles per hour, max gusts 75 to 85 mile per hour winds. We're going to continue to break down not only the wind threat, but we have a tornado threat as well as we go through the overnight, and we have a risk for some flooding as well. Again, we're going to break that all down for you coming up in a few moments.
All right, Alex, thank you. And speaking of flooding, that's the biggest concern right now for a lot of people in Seminole County.
Yeah, and along Lake Monroe, it really was only just a couple of weeks ago that flooding receded, and in some places not completely. WESH 2's Anika Hopi is there along Lake Monroe for us tonight, checking on the latest conditions. Anika?
Yeah, it is definitely picked up out here. The wind along Lake Monroe is really picked up a lot, and so is the rain. We'll show you what we can. It's very dark out here, but the lake, it looks a little bit like we're along the beach right now just because of the wind causing these pretty much waves in the lake right here. We're right along the seawall here, and the water is rushing up over it for sure. It was not doing this so much earlier. We saw some choppiness, but now it is really picked up. And like you said, Lake Monroe was already experiencing some high waters because of Hurricane Ian. Their biggest concern was that it would really rise, and definitely seeing some of it rise right now. And Seminole County officials actually spoke about how Hurricane Ian's changed the way flooding happens here, and they might expect flooding in places they hadn't seen before. We went there earlier today. Listen to what they had to say.
Flooding continues to be a very big concern of ours with this particular event. Some of the creeks and rivers have actually changed during Hurricane Ian, so you can actually see the flow of the water has adjusted due to sediment moving. There are trees in the waterways, so localized flooding is a potential.
So it's a big concern out here. They are urging people to not go out on the roads if you don't have to, especially because all of this is happening in the dark. Again, it is really picking up. It just seems to bring that water right over the seawall here, and there are more police officers and deputies out right now. They said that they increased law enforcement presence. We, even just standing out here just now, have seen some roaming about and asked us if we're okay, that sort of thing. So they are out and about, but they're hoping to not come upon people who need any help at this time. Just hoping people stay home. That is the message tonight, because it's certainly not so great out here. We'll send it back to you guys.
Yeah, it's super loud where you are. So, Nika, you've been out there for a couple of hours. How have conditions changed in the time that you've been where you are?
Oh yeah, it is definitely, the wind and rain was not like this a few hours ago. You could be out here and probably run to your car and stay sort of dry, and the wind is now bringing it in. No matter which way you're walking, you're going to get soaked. And the water just did not look like this. You didn't see those caps along the gusts bringing it in. So it is just, the wind's picked up immensely, the rain's coming down more, and it'll hit you in all directions.
Very loud. Almost sounds like thunder.
Kind of does, yeah.
All right, Anika, thank you so much. Stay safe. Now we want to go ahead and get you back out. We kind of are jumping all around, but we want to make sure that we cover all of Central Florida for you. You see West 2's Gail Pascal-Brown. She's in Flagler tonight. And, you know, Gail, one of the iconic structures we've been monitoring is the Flagler Beach Pier that seems to just kind of be holding on after Ian, and it was just getting pounded earlier today.
Absolutely. It's still getting pounded as we take a look. I mean, the water has gotten up even higher than the pier itself. This pier was built in 1928. At that time, it was, I think, 808 feet long. Matthew took out 400 feet of this pier, and then Ian came along and took out 150. As you can see, the waves are strong. They are pounding. They hit so hard, it looks like they're blowing smoke once they come there. It is really a busy time out here, and, you know, there's really no beach that's left. I did check in with the Emergency Operations Center, which is under a partial activation, and to see just what was going on there. There are still 23 people inside the shelter at Rimfire Elementary School, which is serving as a trifecta, a general population shelter, a special needs shelter, and it's also pet friendly. Folks did go there. You know that they did want the evacuation of the barrier islands all the way to Marineland. We are told that some of those folks did end up going to the shelter at Rimfire Elementary School, and they're being taken care of by the staff there. Parts of A1A here have been closed off because, folks, we just really want you to stay off the roads. And earlier tonight, we did talk to some folks who came out here. That's because they love this bridge. It's iconic. It's important. It's part of their community. It is the bread and butter of Flagler Beach, that's for sure. But it is slated to be demolished in a year, as well as some repairs or rebuilding. That's a whole nother ball of wax. Right now, we're trying to figure out what Nicole is going to do to this bridge. And one guy I talked to, David, he's been a neighbor here for 10 years. He says, you know what? I hate to see it. I hate to see what Nicole's going to do. But he thinks Nicole's going to take this bridge out. I hope that that doesn't happen, but and so do the people. But the bottom line is we're talking about a fierce storm here, and the winds are out they are right now, but it's going to get worse, as our meteorologists have been explaining. The raining, the erosion, all of that is going to get worse here in Flagler Beach. We're just going to keep you informed here as we show you some live pictures here from the Flagler Beach Pier. I'm Gail Pascal-Brown, reporting live in Flagler County. Now back to you.
Yeah, Gail, and the other big concern that people have when they think of the pier is A1A, which runs right by it. You might actually be standing on A1A. Is there any way to tell how much this pounding and thrashing is tearing out under the roadway?
Well, earlier tonight we saw just from the Flagler County Sheriff's Office that some of the coquina or shells or debris, I should say, was on the roadway. And I think some of that debris is one of the reasons why they shut parts of it down, because they don't want a lot of people traveling. And for the most part, they're doing pretty well, except for, like I said, the people who come out here and just try to get shots of this windy sea out here. But yeah, it's we're right here. I'm so afraid that the water's just going to come up and come over because it looks that fierce. I was standing here just a few moments ago getting mesmerized myself, and almost concerning that it's going to make it even further out. I wouldn't be surprised at all, because this is a powerful storm, Jim.
And the wave heights that Tony is talking about, Gail, are going to put it pretty close to right there at the edge. Gail, thanks so much. Yeah, if you've ever walked on that beach, you actually have to take those walkways down onto the beach. And then it's actually really nice down there. It's nice and calm. And the road that's elevated behind you gives you a little bit of relief from the wind. So it's actually a really nice place, but it's also very vulnerable to damage.
Well, because it's so iconic, you know, it's not really a question of if they're going to rebuild. There are already plans underway to rebuild the pier. You know, they're talking about putting concrete in, and so those plans are already underway. So, you know, regardless of what Nicole does, the community is going to get together, they're going to band together, and they're going to rebuild. And they're already in the process of that, and they're going to...
One way or another, they're getting a new pier.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
We are tracking Hurricane Nicole, and remarkable what's happening in Brevard County now. They're the first in line to feel the impacts of the storm, and we talked about power outages. They're also leading Central Florida, not the state. For some reason, Miami-Dade County has more power outages than anyone else right now, and I don't know why that is, but there are over 2,600 in Brevard right now, and we're just now going to start getting into the nitty-gritty of this hurricane.
Yeah, Michelle Meredith has been out there reporting from Brevard County. Let's go ahead and listen to her report from earlier.
Now, our reporter, Christina Watkins, she's in Brevard County. She's on the coast, and you can see the ocean is really rough right now. But we, also in Brevard County, we are inland. We have crossed over the causeway, and it's really not that bad here. But earlier, we went to the Indian River, a completely different story, and we could see how Hurricane Nicole is churning up the river. You can actually see whitecaps. And the neighbors tell us that Ian flooded the road right next to the Indian River, and it looks like Nicole is going to do the same thing. Now, we have been here for hours, and I have to say the attitude right now about the hurricane seems to be pretty calm. There is no mandatory evacuations, there's no curfew, and you know how when people panic, they buy up a lot of things, and bags of ice are one of them? Well, we went into a convenience store and we noticed that the ice chest, it was completely full of ice bags. Plenty of ice for everyone, so that's the small barometer, a feel for how people are feeling in Brevard County. In Brevard County, I'm Michelle Meredith for WESH 2 News.
She's lucky. She's in Brevard. She's not getting whipped around.
Yeah, not yet. So,
yeah. So
we know what's coming.
Let me peel back some layers of the onion here. So when we're in commercial breaks, we talk about this stuff.
Yes.
And there's a couple things that have caught our eye that may have caught yours. And I keep looking at this hurricane map and the radar, and the eye of this storm
it's massive.
Is gigantic. So, Tony, what's up with that? I mean, this is really just kind of crazy.
You know, a lot of times when you transition from a subtropical storm to a tropical storm, you tend to see a lot of this. But you know what? you take a look at that eye, and you could literally put Indian River County in that eye. That's how large it is right now, and it's moving off towards the west-northwest. The other reason why the eye is big is because of the wind field. We've got a big high to the north, and we've got a big area of moisture down to the south, and the upper-level flow, the dynamics are set that it's allowing for the winds to continue to expand outward, and that's why that eye is so large. So we'll continue to babysit that. We also have issues with storm surge. We have warnings up and down the coast right now. Daytona Beach high tide next is at 8:54. We head over towards Cocoa Beach, 8:39. Flagler Beach coming in at 9 a.m. Look at how far east from the coast there in Cape Canaveral those tropical storm force winds extend out 440 miles to the east. Look at that big burst of energy now on the northern side of Nicole. Look at that eye just evacuating all of the air upwards and outwards from the core tonight, and it's building off towards the west-northwest at about 13 miles an hour. So what we are focusing in on and what we are going to continue to monitor and watch is this big plume of moisture that is lurking offshore Brevard County and now coming into Brevard County. We are going to see a significant increase in the winds with each passing hour now as this energy is beginning to translate off towards the west and northwest. When we take a look at the Miami radar, the center right here to Stewart is now roughly about 60 miles off the coast. The western side, however, is literally 20 miles off the coast. So that's how close things are moving into south central Florida. There's Melbourne, big plume of moisture here. I'm going to be checking some of those rainfall totals there. Alex, if you don't mind plugging in just a couple of those wind speeds, we'll stop the velocity product here for our viewers at home. So that we can show folks here in central and northern Brevard County what the winds just offshore look like. Again, this is pretty close to the radar. You're going from 60 to 75 to nearly 80, 85 mile-an-hour winds just offshore, and some of these convective bursts on the northern side of Nicole, and that's what we'll have to watch here overnight tonight, along with any risk for some rotation. Sometimes on these far outer bands, you get just enough torque, you can spin up a quick EF0 or EF1 tornado. Haven't seen anything on the radar to signify that or alert us of anything going on, so that's some good news. Bit low back towards southwestern Orange County. That would include you, Dr. Phillips, Windermere, and Winter Garden. You're getting in on the rain. Daytona Beach, back towards the land in Astor, couple showers here. A lot of rain is on the way. With more on that, here's Alex.
Yeah, that's right, Tony. So we're going to be watching these rainfall rates as we go over the next few hours as the heaviest of the bands begin to move on in. We're going to be seeing those soaking tropical downpours. 48 inches of rain expected, pretty widespread across central Florida as we go throughout the extent of Hurricane Nicole. Flood warnings are still in effect from Ian, from Astor in the St. Johns River all the way down through Sanford and now into the corner here near Lake Harney and up towards Brevard County as well. And this is why. Take a look at the river flooding levels here. We're already still in minor flood stage there at near Lake Harney, minor flood stage near Sanford as well. Those river levels slowly rising at Lake Harney, steady near Sanford. Further downriver up towards the north, St. John's at Astor, moderate flood right now, steady. That is expected to slowly rise. It's going to rise very slowly, so almost steady. St. John's River near DeLand, still at the minor flood stage, but also steady conditions. Take a look at that forecast. Again, it's considered steady because it's barely going up 1/10 of an inch, but once we get over, or 1/10 of a foot, once we get over 4 foot, that is major flood stage, and that is expected as we go into tomorrow afternoon and remain that way as we get through Sunday. Again, that's one of the slowest spots for those waters to recede. Minor flooding right now, St. John's River near DeLand. That's expected to also increase as we go over the next few days. As we take a look at Hurricane Nicole, the Seminole County impacts, we're expecting the worst of the weather as we go into tomorrow morning. What does that include? Well, those winds are going to continue to start to pick up the pace. 45 to 55 mile-per-hour winds, gusting 55 to 70. Again, localized flooding possible as those rains continue to fall. We have already seen quite a large amount of rain in Seminole County, and more is on the way. Orange County also going to be dealing with those big gusts, 60 to 75 mile-per-hour gusts as we go into Thursday morning. That's when we start seeing the worst of the weather arriving. Again, the tropical storm warnings are in effect. 4 to 6 inches of rain expected, localized 7 inches plus. Down to the south in Osceola County, we're going to see a little bit greater winds. Again, further south you go, further east you go, the greater the winds as the storm moves on in. Hurricane Nicole gusting 70 to 80 miles per hour with, again, localized 8+ inches of rain. As we take a look at the day planner for tomorrow, all day. First warning weather day as we watch those strong winds move on in, the tropical downpours. It's not going to be a day that you're going to want to be outside or out on the roads. But much better weather will be on the way. Once we get through tomorrow, once we get through the hurricane, we start to really calm things down on Friday. Wave heights also begin to decrease for Veterans Day. As we go into the weekend, much cooler weather on the backside of the system. It's going to feel wonderful to be outside on Sunday. That's going to give us plenty of time to get out and assess the damage, so don't go rushing out of your home Thursday night or Friday morning to check out that damage. Give it some time for everything to clear on up.
Yeah, nobody's in that big of a hurry. I just checked, and usually at this time in our hurricane coverage, something happens someplace that's really not very good. But there are no reports of any injuries in our state due to this, and there are no people reported killed by this storm so far. So if we can all be smart about how we move forward with this, we could have a really good outcome here.
Yeah, we certainly want to keep that going. We want to get you over to East Orlando now. We've been kind of chatting with Greg. And Greg, I think what your live shot has really been doing for people is just reminding people of the lasting impact of Ian. It's been almost a month, and you still have the bottom floor of this condo complex still uninhabitable. And I think what that does is kind of give some texture and some context to why people are feeling such anxiety with the storm.
Well, it shows you that for people who are not impacted by these storms, that don't have flooding damage and so forth, they don't understand what some of the people in these neighborhoods are going through. You're talking about months and months and months for potential recovery and being displaced from your home. So, for example, we're here at the Dockside Condominiums at Ventura. This is a massive community, and this condo community, you look across the lake here, and there's only just a couple of lights on, and that's why, and that's the reason for that is because the first floor units were flooded out during Ian. So there are a couple of people in their units on the second floor that are doing okay. But let's take you inside one unit, the unit belonging to Brian Claudio and his mom. And they showed me how rain has been coming in just today. They got lucky for Ian. The unit right below them flooded. The upper unit was okay. Now, all of a sudden, Nicole comes around, and they've got water dripping down from the ceilings. So they decided to pack up and get out of there. And here's more of what they said.
Today, we saw that, and we figured it wasn't resolved, so.
You're not staying here, you and your mom?
No, we're not.
Think Nicole's going to be bad? Are you worried about where you're going to find when you get back?
Well, yeah, obviously. You never know nowadays, especially with everything that happened in this neighborhood because of Ian.
And now, earlier today, we were in another area that was flooded badly during Ian, the Orlo Vista neighborhood in West Orange County. And so far, it looks like those three large retention ponds are not coming up into the road level, not coming up into people's homes. But gosh, we saw an awful lot of debris, unsalvageable possessions just scattered out on the lawn. And so certainly those people have great concerns as Nicole approaches because they don't want to see a repeat of what happened with Ian. Again, we're going to keep an eye on some of the things going on in this complex tonight and also in other parts of the county just to make sure that the rainfall really is much less than Ian and may not create some of the flooding problems that they had, and certainly the people who have remained in this condo complex hopes that is the case. Live in Orange County, Greg Fox, WESH 2 News.
So, Greg, as we see, all those empty units behind you, there are some people who decided to stay, but for those who did not, where did they go? I mean, the shelters are a temporary fix, but do you know where they went?
Well, I mean, fortunately, because what happened back with Ian on September 29th, they've had a chance to get some help both from the Red Cross. They've gotten some help from the county. They've also gotten some help from likely management here in the complex to be able to find temporary places to live while some of the reconstruction goes on with their first floor units.
And Greg, I guess we can't look at the situation in the Orlo Vista neighborhood the way we did before and to still see all that what was left of people's homes in the front yards just kind of had to take your breath away, even now.
It's amazing. It really does speak to the reality that when these storms hit, it's not just what you see on the news that day or the next day or even the next week. You're talking about, in many cases, a life-altering event that may take, if not months, maybe even a year or more to recover from. Some people don't have insurance. And if they have to live somewhere for a long time, do they have money for security deposits to be able to look for a new home? It can be a displacing element, and certainly the agencies in Central Florida that deal with homelessness have certainly been working with some of these people to provide them at least some temporary shelter so that they can have a roof over their heads while they restore the roofs that were taken away. And in many cases, their living room, dining room, den, kitchen was washed away in some of these floods.
We can't forget about these people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Greg, thanks.
And, you know, even if you were spared, you still have some units that are leaking, and then you got to deal with mold. So it's just an ongoing situation. We're going to continue to monitor that situation and the weather situation right now, county by county, as soon as we come back from this quick break. We'll see you in just a second.